when you think about your employees and you realize that they're all smarter than you, you've won.
You have been to my office a lot, right? Exactly.
No, I haven't.
Surround yourself with people way smarter than you,
Yeah.
Right.
Scratch Entrepreneur. True stories of remarkable people who dropped everything to turn an idea into a healthy, profitable business. All of us have aspirations, from Elan Musk, who wants to dig tunnels under Los Angeles and colonize Mars, to homeless kids sitting in school and trying to look normal. We all have aspirations. The cool thing about being human is that there are as many visions of a better future as there are people. Everyone's is different, and even though there are around 7 billion different sets of aspirations, none of them are wrong. Different than what your parents wanted? Maybe. Misguided? At least 40% of the time for sure. But 100% yours and only yours. Well, if you stick to your guns, then definitely yours. Aspirations are the fabric of being human. From wanting to win your next fantasy football game to trying to create balance between your work and your home life. But when we become entrepreneurs, we test the very fabric of those aspirations. Suddenly, they're not just hopes and dreams, but rather the bread, butter, and mortgage payment of your life. The aspirations of entrepreneurs are often referred to by another name, your business plan. And that plan is the ultimate test of your aspirations. Our guest today has tested lots of his aspirations, but he's not a business owner. Like a few Scratch Entrepreneur guests before him, he's the director of a nonprofit. For the last 30 years, Mike McAfee has been selling cities. Actually, over those years, he's sold counties and even states, too. Now, in his role as the director of Visit Bloomington, he sells one specific city, Bloomington, Indiana. On this episode, he shares exactly how he does it. We're glad you joined us. Hey, this is Jeremy Goodrich, owner of Shine Insurance Agency and your host for the Scratch Entrepreneur Podcast. Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I was definitely an athlete when I was a kid. So, of course, I wanted to be an NBA basketball player, right? But seriously, I was thinking of teaching and coaching high school basketball.
Yeah.
That was a passion that I had. So I grew up thinking I would do that even as I entered college. I thought that's what I would do.
You know, sports are something that comes up a lot in these conversations. And I played sports all the way through college as well. And that was really what I wanted to be when I grew up too, right?
Right.
And do you think that having those inspirations and passions as a kid, like how did they translate into your adult life?
Absolutely, goal-oriented, competitiveness. It's important in what I do today. I'm a salesperson for Bloomington. No doubt about it. We are competing against destinations, not even in the Midwest anymore. It's internationally. So that certainly set that ingrained in me somewhat. To I try to balance that, but it's there.
Yeah, it's like how to win and how to lose, too. I mean, do you think you learned a little bit about that as well?
Of course, yeah. Losing gracefully, or, giving it your all and not being devastated by a loss, right?
Yeah, and I think learning from it. Like, my son's doing soccer practice now, and he's doing it with other coaches and stuff, and there's a part of me that just wants to be like, I want to teach you everything, And he's very much laid back about the whole thing. So it's an interesting balance to learn how different personalities and different perspectives work when it comes to sports, because it's just so clear and right in front of you, kind of.
Sports and everything else. I've got 4 daughters, and I'm like that all the time about, okay, step back for a second. They got to figure this out and experience that.
Yeah. And that's leadership. Donald Griffin was on here a couple of weeks ago and talked about an advisor that advised a lot of people in Bloomington about the leadership not being at the front of the pack. Like a good leader is more like a shepherd. I really liked that visual.
I agree with that. For my staff at my office, it's, what can I do to set the table for them as much as possible, give them all the tools that they need, and participate in everything that they're doing on a daily basis. But it's very important to get out of their way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes if you look like you're not doing anything, but everything is running super smoothly and well, you're doing it right.
I don't know. I think if somebody looks like they're not doing anything, they might not be doing anything, but definitely there's always another project for you to work on yourself. And I do a lot of projects myself just because we have so many. I always say if we had a ton more budget, money to market with, we probably wouldn't create a bunch of new programs. We'd actually fund the ones that we're doing adequately.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense, and that's super smart, right?
I hope so.
Cool. So as a kid, you were into sports, into basketball, really wanted to kind of grow up and be an athlete. There must have been a point where that shifted a little bit for you, whether that was college or high school, where you started looking at other things you wanted to be when you grew up or whatnot. How did that shift, and what were some of those things that you changed to wanting to be?
As I was going through college and competing in sports there and doing that type of stuff, I don't know. I think I probably did get a little burnout on it, and started getting into more specialized classes about marketing and promotion and economics and things like that. So certainly, that drew an interest from me, and the whole marketing side of things are fascinating. Marketing in the sports world fascinates me.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I think it might fascinate me more than the sport itself sometimes, which is sad today. And that was my major. And of course, financially, you get into sales and you do well, you can make some good money.
Yeah.
If you do well, you do well.
Exactly. So are there some examples of sports marketing that you can think of, either from back then or even from now maybe, where it's like that was done really, really well?
I think like anybody who might be a basketball fan, I think of the NBA and when Magic Johnson, all that stuff happened with Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, and how the NBA exploded in that. And certainly there's so much of it is timing and luck, and the phenomenon with Michael Jordan and how he basically conquered the world, and all of that.
Yeah,
and so, I was
Yeah.
in high school, when he was coming into his prime, and I was playing basketball. So that just heavily influenced me to watch that. I can't imagine if social media would have been around then. Can
Just
you?
all the things that,
And even today, as I've watched that, the marketing of that all these years later, and just the sick, and believe me, I'm not completely motivated by money. Don't get it like that. But I watch the sick amount of money that those people are making.
Absolutely.
$1 million a game, and in some sport like football and things like that. I don't agree with that, but it's fascinating to watch that and the economics of that and how it all works together. So
yeah, well, the economics of it, when you get into the sports conversation, there is so much money involved in it because so many people are paying attention and buying ads and all that kind of stuff. So then what's making people interested? That's the athletes. And so if there's X amount of money involved, you would hope that the athletes would get a super fair share of that money. And if that happens to be $1 million a game, well, that's just the market that they're a part of.
Right. Right. And how the media feeds into it all, and and how the media interacts with the athletes, and the athletes interact back, and they know that's kind of their bread and butter. And even if they don't agree, they know they need to work that angle. So
and so many athletes, I mean, college athletes is another example, that don't become a part of the compensation package in some ways around the millions of dollars that's being made, which is really a whole nother conversation.
Right. I didn't mean to go off on that side.
No, I enjoy it. Yeah. So when you were in college, you started getting into the marketing side and the sales side. Is that what you went on to do after college?
I did actually. When I went to a small liberal arts school in Illinois called Millikan University. If you're in this area, it's similar to DePaul. We played against DePaul in basketball and things like that. So after school, I actually moved to St. Louis and started waiting tables and selling copiers. Like door to door in high rises in downtown St. Louis, 50 cold calls a day.
Wow.
And waiting tables at night. You talk about learning from rejection. Get out of my office. Yeah, what are you doing in here? We don't want a new copier. Or the great thing about waiting tables is when I'm interviewing people, I love that restaurant experience because you're dealing with issues and solving them right
quickly.
away.
Yeah.
And the beauty of waiting tables is you leave the restaurant, it's over. You know, you don't have to think about it during the night and come back the next day and deal with that again. So
Yeah. Were you a good waiter?
I was pretty good, actually.
Yeah. I was a terrible waiter.
Yeah.
I would forget. So, with waiting tables, a lot of it is remembering, processes and steps. Obviously there's a side of it that's being good with the folks you're working with, having knowledge of the plates and what's in them and everything else. But then there's just kind of remembering to do stuff. And I think that's where I failed. So I would forget to put it in the computer. And then somebody's sitting there 20 minutes later waiting for their food. And I'm realizing, I never even asked the kitchen to make it.
I'm probably the opposite of that. I was pretty good. I'm kind of hardcore about efficiency. And so, taking care of that as quickly and as in the easiest manner possible was pretty important to me. So I was pretty good about not forgetting to do that. So,
yeah. How'd you learn to handle the rejection of, like, anyone who's ever done cold calling or done door-to-door sales? I mean, brutal. What were some insights you learned from that?
Obviously, you just can't take it personally, and I knew in positions like that, both of those, I didn't really care that much about. I knew I wasn't going to sell copiers for the rest of my life. I was wanting a year or so experience to get into more of another sales position, which is exactly what happened. And same thing with waiting tables. So I think it's great that you're dealing with rejection that's not really all that serious, or you don't take it personally and you don't go home and lose sleep about it or something. So that was very helpful. And you were trained to know that that's what you're going to get, especially selling copiers. You walk into 50 offices in a building a day, 45 of them are going to don't even want to talk to you. Maybe 3 of them might take your card, and 2 of them might say, I'm not quite there yet. Come back in a month. We may need one or something. So, yeah.
So you just realize that's the way it is, and then you just go with that. So rejection becomes a part of your process.
I'm not a confrontational person. I'm not a person, I don't enjoy the rejection, but again, I can deal with that. So.
And I guess that's a lesson for business owners in general. Like, if you understand how your process works, if your process is a cold call type of process, then you're going to have a very low ratio of people who actually buy in. If you try a different kind of process, a different way of approaching business, then you can expect a lower rejection rate, I guess.
Where everything's qualified. You're kind of what I'm doing now is we're calling on pre-qualified leads.
Yeah.
People that we know are interested.
Yeah, I feel like then the next level up from that is when it's like inbound. So when people are calling you instead of you calling them, I think that tends to be obviously the easiest process. Or
sure, who's got that happening though, right? I mean, there's some of that now. I know, again, I know we're going to talk about this in a second, but it's not that easy. Right.
All right. So leap us forward. I have a feeling this might be kind of a big leap, but let's get there. So how do you end up in the position to have the role as the director of Visit Bloomington?
Mm-hmm. About a year or so after moving to St. Louis, I actually got a job as the promotions manager for the Missouri Division of Tourism in Jefferson City, Missouri. Okay. And that was working on their tourism events, different conferences that they had, different things, all over the state. I moved to Jefferson City and did that for several years. And that really started my journey where I moved from there to Chicago and worked for Six Flags theme parks in the marketing department. I had a 5-state territory that I drove around with all my reps, and we did theme park ticketing programs with banks and schools and places like that. Iowa, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. I took a great leap from there, and I moved to Great Falls, Montana, and went to work for an advertising agency, and my account was the state travel account, Visit Montana, which was wonderful. And I did that for a couple of years, and I ended up moving I probably would have stayed there forever, but I had another opportunity to go and work for a radio network in Portland, Oregon. So I moved from there to Portland. Here's a lesson. And it was a bunch of us 25 and under people working for this radio boutique, small things. We basically produced programming and traded it to radio stations for advertising inventory. And I was the person that sold that advertising and also did the traffic director for the commercials and things of what shows they went into. But we were producing shows we did one with Snoop Dogg. We did one with Jim Brickman. I'm trying to think of it. We did like a show all about Elvis, all kinds of formats, a lot of talk radio and things like that. 9/11 happened and we lost all of our fourth quarter advertising in 2001 after that. Everybody Everybody stopped. Network radio is kind of the bottom of the barrel in advertising. You hear all those Geico commercials out there and things like that, and they're running as many as you can, because those are shows that are running at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, or in all the low rating spots. That's when they do programming, because radio stations don't want to pay to produce that stuff, so they're bartering that stuff out. So after 9/11, we lost all of our fourth quarter business, and it really put us in a hole. We went out of business in early 2002. So
after 9/11, businesses were making advertising decisions to pull back because they just weren't sure what was going to happen.
Right.
Or
they just stopped advertising. There just was a financial crunch. A lot of them just stopped advertising right after that with us. So that really hurt us. And we were a young company, didn't have much money in the bank. You know the story. And so we all kind of scrambled and went our own ways, which brought me back to the Midwest.
Yeah.
And I went and became the director of the Convention and Visitors Bureau in Joplin, Missouri. Yeah. Talk about a change, Portland, Oregon to Joplin. But I was there for about 4 years before. And growing up in the Midwest, I'd always loved the Midwest college towns. I grew up in Illinois, so Champaign and of course Madison and Ann Arbor and Bloomington was one. And this position came open, and I went after it and jumped on it. And
that's great.
Here we are 11 years later.
So every single one of those examples through your growth as an adult and in your business world was really around tourism, except the Portland radio bit, which I'm still kind of turning that around in my head, how, obviously 9/11 had so many effects that I saw on the surface, but I guess I'd never really thought about the business effect and the fact that so many businesses, particularly in the fourth quarter of 2001, took a step back from their spending and their marketing just to, reassess like that effect and the fact
they
that
really did. That's exactly what happened.
Wow.
So,
okay, well, you obviously have a lot of history in tourism, in specific around the whole country, and so when we come back from break, we're going to dig into tourism a little bit and just talk about the things that go on in that industry, that world, and your experience with that. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Cool. All right, we're back with Mike McAfee of Visit Bloomington. And Mike, we're going to dig into tourism a little bit. So last week, Mackenzie and we went on a vacation. We went to Montreal for a few days, and then we took a train ride over to Quebec City, and we stayed there for a little while. The cities were beautiful. The train ride was awesome. It was everything a tourist wanted to have in a process. And I found myself thinking multiple times, God, there are a lot of tourists here. There's tourists everywhere, and I would complain about it to Mackenzie, and she'd be like, dude, we're tourists too. Like, you can't complain about the tourists when you are one. When you look at towns like that, especially Quebec City, where there's a part of the town that is just flooded with tourists, what are the workings that are going on there? What are the similarities with Bloomington and maybe the differences?
Well, certainly over tourism is an issue in our industry. In the world today, I hear it about Madrid and Paris and places like that, especially when you've got maybe a large event like the Olympics or something going. So those are issues. And I talk about this on our level here in Bloomington all the time about being responsible and responsible growth. When I get asked about I-69 or the convention center stuff and a line at a restaurant on Friday night. It is about that balance of responsible and sustainable growth. And we're going through these growing pains of how to figure all of that out. But you're exactly right. I mean, here in Bloomington, in our level, we see that we are a weekend destination, and you see it if you try to go out to eat on a Friday, and especially on a home, this weekend with parents' weekend or it's family weekend. We know it's going to be a zoo starting on Friday afternoon. It's a wonderful zoo, and we try to balance that and make it so that everything works for everybody. You can get around and all that type of stuff. That's kind of our goal at Visit Bloomington is. We know we're a weekend destination. We know our hotels are 95% full this weekend. When can we grow? Well, it's Sunday through Thursday nights, and that's kind of what we're doing. We're trying to create weekday business. We want to bring in weekday visitors, fill those gaps, fill those holes. We know, November, December, January, February, those are slower months for our community when it comes to that type of stuff. So
that makes a ton of sense, right? You're looking at the tourism. You don't want to have over tourism because then, I guess, what are some of the negatives of over tourism?
crowds or lines or what if we have a huge festival and there's not enough security? We didn't know it was going to be that big, and we didn't hire enough security, things like that. So just making sure you have all the resources, the infrastructure in place to have all of that. And we do here. I mean, we're very fortunate to get. I always say, in Indiana University, it's our Disney World. It's the most recession strong attraction in the state of Indiana. Yeah. Doesn't matter. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but as far as recession proof, it's pretty close. 40,000 screaming college kids, no matter what's going on with the economy. Yeah. Most of the time. So we're very fortunate to have that. So how do we balance things with that, making sure that it is Parents Weekend this weekend? So let's make sure there's not a Lotus Festival this weekend or some other large event that there's no hotel rooms, there's no this or that. So that's we constantly get calls, hey, we want to do a barbecue competition on a weekend in the fall. Well, it's okay. It's hard, it's hard to do that. Where are you going to do it? And how do we balance that in? And so we're often pushing people to other times of the year when we do have time to have that stuff.
So that kind of brings me to the role of Visit Bloomington, because I'm not 100% sure, and I just heard some stuff that's interesting. So how would you describe the role that Visit Bloomington plays in the goings-on of tourism in Bloomington, Indiana?
First of all, let me say, we are a 501c6. The Convention and Visitors Bureau of Monroe County, Inc. is our incorporated name. We are able to go do business as Visit Bloomington because it makes more sense.
Right.
People don't travel to counties very often. We happen to live next door to the exception in Brown County, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It's hard. I use that example all the time, and then I'm like, well, but I happen to live next to the example of you people doing that. But most people don't promote Monroe County or Bartholomew County or whatever it is. It's people travel to cities, so we're fortunate to have that. But we are a sales and marketing organization. It is our job to promote county attractions for leisure, sports, and conventions and meetings to all kinds of visitors. We want them to come here and of course stay overnight in our hotel room so we can generate those funds that can help us market more. Yeah. That's important. I'm not going to say it's not to us, but we also want them to eat in our restaurants and shop in our shops and take part in the culture and what our community has to offer. And the beautiful part is we love them, but they drop that money and they stay here and then they go home, and they tell their friends and their family and their influencers. And we certainly have a lot of success with that here in Bloomington. You know it.
Oh, absolutely.
People come here. It's our hardest part is really to get somebody to understand and give it a shot one time. Once they do, they're like, wow, I'm going back there again and again and again. 80% of our visitors are repeat visitors because they love it. So.
And I would expect that a high percent of our visitors are somehow associated with the college as a college town. Sure. I have a story that's similar to a lot of people that you meet in Bloomington, Indiana. You came down here for college and kind of never left. You fell in love with the town. I guess that's what you're trying to do in a microcosmic sense for someone to come down here once and then fall in love with the town and then come back again. Yeah. You know that you're not marketing to people who are going to stay necessarily.
Right.
They're here,
A lot of people don't see our marketing efforts. Why would they? We don't spend our resources in Bloomington, Monroe County very often. We do some advocacy, advertising. Hey, it's National Tourism Week, $300 million industry. It employs 8,000 people. You see a visitor, you see a tourist, say hi to him and be nice. That's the bottom line of that. But we do some of that stuff. But most of our stuff, and I want to talk about this for a second, is the three segments that I talked about. Leisure, which again is parents and family coming this weekend for the game, or maybe they're going camping at Monroe Lake. The leisure stuff,
absolutely.
Like you and your wife in Ontario.
Yeah.
And then two types of groups: sporting events. I have a sports salesperson. He was just at a trade show last week where he's meeting with large sporting event organizers. The big USA softball tournament that's held at Twin Lakes every year. We partner with Bloomington Parks and Rec to produce that, to actually get that event to come here. We've hosted 23 national championships in the last 30 years.
So bringing sporting events to
bring sporting events here with high numbers of teams. We want the 100-team basketball tournament here. Again, not at a time when the town is already full, but maybe at a slower time, the last week of July before school starts, those types of things. Yeah. That's huge for us. And what's great about those, obviously, is those teams, that most of them travel with their parents. Their parents come, they might bring a sibling. We see that in the summer a lot. Turns into the family vacation, and they end up coming here. And I'll tell you what we see over and over again too, especially with those softball tournaments, is we host a lot of girls tournaments. So girls 12 and under national championships. Those kids come here and they tour the university, and we have heard it time and time again of kids who fell in love with it and ended up coming here to school. Some of them even end up playing on the softball team.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. And then conferences and conventions, and we obviously are very fortunate that we're slowly but surely going to expand our convention center right down the street from us. That, again, is about us trying to bring in more weekday business. We want that group of 500, the Indiana Chiropractors Association.
Sure.
We want them here on a Tuesday and Wednesday night here in the area, doing exactly what I said, that economic impact that comes from tourism and the money they spend. They all spend about $230 on their trip here while they're here, and that's on the low side.
Yeah.
And it's just right.
So you got leisure, you got sports, and you've got conferences, and all those pieces, some have controlled times that they're coming, and you can't really fix that or whatnot. But one of the things I've just learned in this conversation is the idea of really trying to balance so that there's more folks coming into our town at times when they weren't in the past. Right.
Yeah. Like I said, we're about, depending on the weekend, but on average, we're about 85% full. Our hotels, we got 2,300 hotel rooms in our town. It's really not that many compared to a West Lafayette that has over 5,000, a South Bend, a Fort Wayne, who both have 7,000. I mean, they have a lot more hotel rooms than we do.
Yeah.
So we're very full on the weekends, but you don't build a church just for Easter Sunday, right? So that's why we're trying to create that weekday business. We're about 85% full on weekends and 50 to 60% full weekdays. So we know if we can get those heads in beds Sunday through Thursday night, it's just the best impact we can create for the area.
So that brings up a topic, Airbnb. So it sounds like that part of what you're working with and part of where the funds are coming from are from traditional hotels and things like that. I think I looked recently, and I'm, as an insurance agent, hearing more and more people wanting to Airbnb their house. I think I saw that there were 350 to 400 different Airbnbs in Bloomington. How has that affected your side of the industry?
It's definitely had an effect, and I'm a big fan of the sharing economy. I'm a big fan of Airbnb. I want it to be here. I want it to succeed. I want it to grow, but I also want it to be legal. I want them to follow codes and ordinances and compete fairly with hotels. If anybody's out there listening to me, I am not the tax police, but I'm telling you, if you're not collecting sales tax and you're not collecting that innkeeper's tax off your Airbnb, you're breaking the law. And I'm not doing anything about it, but someday somebody might crack down and you'll be liable for all that back tax. So that's just a fair, just letting people know if you are listening to that. So, but hey, that's my concern more. It's about quality and safety. It's hard to control that. It's hard because one day it's on the online for rent, the next day it might not be, and where are those at, and that type of stuff. And I worry about things like, what if there's not a lock on the back door? What if
all the what ifs,
all the what ifs, and we just don't, most importantly for the safety of people, we don't want any incident to happen here. But obviously our reputation is on the line there too, as a safe place to visit. And we know we are, but those types of things worry me, and I just
yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Like what you're laying out here is, look, what we're trying to do is build a community that's great to come to, that's great to do leisure or sports or a conference in, and that all these pieces work together, that the restaurants know when folks are coming so they can staff right. The hotels know when folks are coming so they can staff right. And as long as everybody's a part of the ecosystem, it works. One of the problems could be that when something like Airbnb is not a part of the ecosystem, it could have a potential not to break the whole thing, but to weaken the whole thing.
Right. And that's my thing. It's if somebody's out there and they're renting out their extra room a couple times a year, that's what you're doing. But if you're in this business and you've got your Airbnb and you're renting it out on a weekly basis a lot, you need to be involved in our industry. I mean, that's your livelihood, and you need to be part of our team and promoting this area. You know what I mean? And comply with everything. At least that's what I think, and that's what I'll always be saying to everybody. And I'm not tracking anybody down out there or anything like that. I don't.
So what are the things that an Airbnb provider can do? Collecting the innkeeper's tax sounds like that's a big one. Are there other things that someone who wants to be a responsible Airbnb provider can do?
Well, sure. I mean, that's part of it. Once you do that and you're in our system, we're putting you on our website. We're promoting you to visitors when they call us looking for. I mean, we get calls all the time, especially like for this weekend when all the hotels are sold out. Yeah. And we tell people about Airbnb. Hey, if you can't find anything, go to Airbnb.com and you'll find something. Like I said, I'm a big believer in that. And I don't want to talk about this too much more. I'm telling you, because I mean, there's it's just be a part of our industry and make sure you're safe and your place is secure and follow what we're doing and share that information with your visitors. Maybe get our visitor guides in there and things like that. So talking about that and just advocacy for our industry and how big of an industry this is. Even I mean, we're an international destination because of the university. Yeah. And, I mean, we see it. We see the population of international students continues to skyrocket. Yeah. So that's a challenge. It's wonderful, but it can be a challenge too for us. Just how do we communicate? How do we, so many of those kids don't ever go, west of College Avenue, right?
So, off campus in any way. Right. And I think how do you bring folks out? And that's one of the things we love about Bloomington is just that there's so many different kinds of folks. It creates a certain kind of culture that is why most of us are here.
We're so lucky. We're so fortunate to have what we have and all. And I say what the university sort of sets that table and creates that culture that we all can work with and promote.
So are there weaknesses that a town like Bloomington has? We're a little bit smaller. We're very college focused. About 80,000 people in Bloomington when the college kids are here, about half of that when they're gone. I don't know if that's right or not, but okay. What are some of the hard parts about marketing a town like Bloomington?
Well, and I have to say first, I want to say you're asking me this, so I'll tell you, but for the most part, we're so lucky to have what we have. I mean, the opportunities are endless and 3 lakes and all of our outdoor and all that kind of stuff. So, but I think just what you said, we are still a small town and it's so important. What does everybody love about Bloomington? Mm-hmm. Because we do have that small town charm, but yet we have some of those amenities that you find in an international destination, the restaurants on 4th Street and all that, and the fact that a world-class symphony at Indiana University plays you can go see them for free every day in the summer and those incredible things. But just that balance of growth and I mean, I think we've felt it this summer with road construction and things like that. How do you balance that out and things that are out of your power, like what happened with the I-69 delays, and how do you responsibly promote that and things like that. So I think that balance of all of that and like I said, there are times when we've got 23 hotel rooms in this town, and there are times we need 7,000 easily. We could fill them up, but you just can't support that during those other times. So we've got Brown County and Greene County and Martinsville and Bedford that are dependent on us for some of these events we have because they get overflow rooms from that.
Yeah,
and we
absolutely.
love that. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So that the weaknesses are just the things that are not in our control, and the fact that being a small town sometimes has harder parts to it. That's just what comes with. It's what people love and what makes it a little bit more challenging sometimes.
Right.
So then on the other side, and you've really already hit on some of this, but I'll ask the question anyway because I asked the weaknesses question. What are some of the strengths that you really see in a town like ours?
The university sets the table for that, and I mean the culture, the Tibetan Mongolian Buddhist Center, and having those Buddhist, all that stuff. 4 or 5 of those in Bloomington is unbelievable. People don't believe that. They're like, "What? That's not that big a deal." And then they go see it, and they're completely blown away. Or 3 lakes. We have in Monroe, Griffey, and Lake Lemon. People again don't understand that Hoosier National Forest, and we are built right in the middle of the woods. We really are, and of course we have our downtown square. And this downtown area is the most vibrant downtown, and I'd put it up against anything, anything in the Midwest for sure. We're just so fortunate to have people that get that and people that invest in it. I mean, Cook Cook helping with that. So
as
well as
the
the surrounding areas and all the great things happening in Ellettsville with the limestone history, and we're fortunate to be right next to Brown County, where they have the best mountain biking east of the Rocky Mountains, and we have some incredible road riding around here. So cycling continues to explode, and outdoor recreation, and all the artists and art that comes here, and people, the artists that live here and are creating here on a daily basis. So I could keep rolling on.
Oh yeah, no, we just went to TC Steel.
Yeah.
That's a state park close to here. That's a real famous painter. Kind of a leader in his painting genre. We went there this past weekend. It's beautiful.
I'd be remiss to say too. I think all of that stuff helps literally set the table for our foodie culture as well. I mean, we are a culinary destination in the Midwest for sure, with just all the independent restaurants and certainly the breweries and the wineries and that scene that continues to grow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So before we move on and take a break, just tourism in general, kind of where do you see it going, and what are the things you're excited about in the future for tourism?
I talked a little bit about the convention center and the expansion of that is happening. And what we're trying to do with that is I always try to quantify it with people, because they get a little worried, just as I said about that overcrowding and things like that. But what we're literally trying to do is we're already hosting groups in there on a weekly basis of
in the existing convention center.
200 people come in from this organization or that organization, and at the same time there might be a board meeting for 30 people over here or there. But the issue we have is that oftentimes we'll have multiple groups of 200 to 400 that want to use it at the same time. So say I always use the chiropractors as an example. Say we have that group that's going to be there on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday during the week, but the chamber wants to have their annual luncheon for 500 people in the great room on Wednesday. How do you balance that? I mean, it's
hard to do.
It's hard to do. So we figure it out.
Space,
so that's what we want, a space to be able to balance both of those groups. And if we do that, we're also able to bring in another group at the same time, because we have so much overlap. Or if we need to, we can host the Indiana Democratic Party annual gathering for 1,200 people. We want to get that big. And for us, again, I can't stress it enough, it's all about, we're trying to create more weekday business. And we want to fill those gaps, get them to come in on a Sunday night and leave on Wednesday types of stuff.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about running a nonprofit. We're going to move out of the tourism conversation, move into the business ownership, or in your case, running a not-for-profit conversation. So we'll be back in a second. All right, we're back with Mike McAfee of Visit Bloomington. He's the director of Visit Bloomington, has been for about 11 years. And we just got done talking tourism. Now we're going to dig into a little bit about not-for-profit. So can you talk a little bit about what kind of not-for-profit Visit Bloomington and why that even matters?
We're a 501c6.
Okay.
And so basically that we represent the tourism industry, the visitor industry, the hospitality industry here in Monroe County, and we market and promote on behalf of that industry. That's kind of the best way I can sum it up. I think people are often talking about 501c3s or 6s, and the different a C3 is basically where you are representing like one charitable organization. You might be the Leukemia Association, so you're raising money for that. Donations that you get are tax deductible.
Okay.
We're able to raise and sell things, spend money, and go out and we represent an entire industry. That's a big way I think of the difference. There's probably a better explanation than that, but that's kind of where I specialize.
That makes total sense. You're representing multiple entities inside of an industry, and so that's 6. And if you're just representing one, that's 3. Maybe I boiled it down too far, but
yeah, I'm no not-for-profit expert either, but
okay. So you've got a staff of what, 9 folks? You said
there's 9 of us.
When you're thinking about how to put all those people together, how to hire the right people for the right seats, like how are you making decisions about what roles make the most sense for growing your entity?
Right. We are lean and mean organization, all pretty close knit. I think I talked about that a little bit, about trying to set the table for my people and get out of their way and let them do their jobs. And we have job descriptions. We have a 3-year strategic plan. I've got a board of directors and executive committee, so I've got a lot of financial oversight, especially when we're spending tax dollars. Hugely important to us. We get audited every year, and we do a 3-year strategic plan, and we follow that pretty closely. And I think my job is try to create harmony there with amongst all those people, and sometimes I might throw a job description out the door because I might need to adapt it based on so many strengths. I hire somebody on this to do this job, and it's like, oh, look what they're bringing to the table. They're really good at social media or writing content for blogs or all kinds of things. So those, I don't want to say I throw it out the door, but they can be revised and adapted as we need them. So I mostly hire for strengths and how you fit, how you might fit as a team member in my organization. I have a job open right now that I just posted this morning.
Yeah.
My social media content coordinator position. So
cool.
That's what I'll do there. I'll look for that person who fits our organization the best and can do those things. But it's a lot more than just, you need to be able to write. You need to be able to buy a Facebook advertising program. You got to be able to do that, but you also need to be able to evaluate
the culture.
Yeah,
exactly. Know what the whole. It seems like almost any job, and certainly a social media job, like you have to understand the heart of the thing that you're representing. So for you guys, it's obviously the heart of Bloomington, the heart of what you just described, how you're pitching Bloomington, and then being able to copyright or create a Facebook ad obviously is important too.
There's no fluff in what we're doing. I mean, we're lean and mean, and everybody's got so much to do, and I'm doing my own projects and sticking my nose, hey, how's that going? What can I do to help you today? Okay, go do that, and those types of things. So there, we're not having a bunch of internal staff meetings where we discuss things for hours and hours about how we're going to do this, because I'm hiring people that know what they're doing, and we're working together and collaborating to get them done. But everybody's very capable, and that's the way it's got to be.
Yeah, I feel like I'm happiest in our business when I'm not, like when the systems are already taught and everybody's using them and intelligently moving forward on their own. And yeah, we're having conversation, but it's not as much of a coaching or teaching conversation as it is we're like all part of a system that's working together,
Right. And as soon as you get there, it all changes, right? So then you go there anyway. So, you're doing that stuff anyway, just because of natural, the stuff that happens, things that happen that impact you from the outside. So you're constantly evaluating and measuring and making adjustments, and you keep moving forward. And I think this is one thing that's happened to me with experience and getting better at my job. And I hope I get better I still think I get better at my job every day, but, don't dwell on the negatives, and also don't dwell too long on the victories. Move on, I celebrate them, but move on quickly and keep going, and don't make emotional decisions. That's
I think the other thing, like you just said, that it's always shifting. Like as a business owner, as a director of not-for-profit, things are always shifting. And I don't know that I've learned that lesson yet. Like there's a part in my brain that I'm like, well, if we just do this, or we just get this system in place, or we just hire these certain amount of people, or if we just, then we're going to be at some magical place. And I think the more I talk with folks on this podcast and the more I just learn about being a business owner, like there is no magical place. That's not the point. The point is to keep, this train rolling and enjoy yourself as you're doing it. Have a smart business that's put together well. For you have to have business plans and you have to have oversight. And in some ways that's probably nice because you've got the foundation right there. I think I might have just changed subjects, but anyway, like
measurable goals, right? I got measurable. I've got my strategic plan doesn't say, increase visitors to your website. It says increase visitors to your website by 10% every year.
Yeah.
I'm nervous about it all the time, even though we're crushing those numbers.
Good. Yeah.
Those types of things. But it's real, and so I'm held accountable to that, and I want to be. And things change, and as soon as you figure it all out, things change. And that's kind of one thing we're doing is we're representing this hospitality industry so that we can help them with things that change or new technologies or things like this. Last week we hosted we brought in a company called you ever heard of Zingerman's in Ann Arbor, Michigan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, they have a hospitality training arm called Zing Train.
Okay.
And we've hosted 2 seminars with them for it's really for anybody actually anybody would benefit from it because it's just about good customer service. But we hosted them again for a second seminar last week, and it was for frontline employees about giving good service and being service leaders and things like that. So I think that's important to us. So I mean, the worst thing for us that can happen is, say, parents are here this weekend and they're staying right down here at the Hilton Garden Inn and they go up to the front desk. They get here and they've got Friday night. They're ready to go to the game on Saturday, but they've got Friday night and they don't even know what they're doing yet. So they go to the front desk and they say, "Hey,
what can I do?
What can I do?" And the worst thing that could happen is maybe a really smart, great college student that might be working there that maybe hasn't heard from us or isn't aware, and they might say, "Well, I'm from Indianapolis, and there's really nothing to do here, so you should go up there." You know what I mean? So we need to make sure they understand that, hey, here's the visitor guide, and there's so much to do here and things like that. And that's a drastic example. That doesn't happen very often, but it can.
Oh, anytime I've ever stayed somewhere, you go up to the front desk and you say, "Hey, what do you like here?"
Right.
And the better someone can answer that question, the better experience someone has. And assuming then they go out and have a good time. That's the other side, right? It's
huge, isn't it? I mean, we want to turn those people into influencers so that they do go home and say great things and how much of a good time that. And we see that all the time. And so that was another drastic example, but that's what we want to make sure everybody's aware, and like I say, as soon as we figure it out, everything changes, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, and that's cool though. I think that you're looking at, okay, as a business, my job is to do X. So how can I go out and really do that and make that happen? Any other, maybe from that Zingerman's conversation or something like that, insights you have into business ownership, directing, burning things that you think our listeners could really take from your experience as a director of a not-for-profit?
It's important to me to be involved on a daily basis with what's going on at my office with the day-to-day activities of those people. But it's that balance again of making sure they have the tools that they need and the knowledge or the flexibility, and then saying, okay, go do that. Let me know how I can help you. I'll ask you about it. And, we'll follow up and talk about it again, types of things. So participating in that to the right level, the balance of the right level to make sure I'm being effective in how I'm supposed to do that, but also letting them grow and enjoy and take ownership of that. Yeah. So
when you think about your employees and you realize that they're all smarter than you, you've won.
You have been to my office a lot, right? Exactly.
No, I haven't.
Surround yourself with people way smarter than you, right? Right.
All right, cool. So when we come back, Mike's going to tell us a little bit about where you can find Visit Bloomington if you want to. And then we're going to head over to Patreon and have the after show. So we'll be back in just a sec. All right, we're back with Mike McAfee of Visit Bloomington. Mike, again, thanks so much for spending this last hour with us.
Thanks for having me. I've had a good time.
Cool. So if you think about Visit Bloomington 5 years from now, you've obviously done some of this. What does your organization look like?
That's an easy answer for me. We need to be located downtown here in the new expanded convention center. That's been the plan all along. That's really how we went out and promoted that to the community to support that project. I always say, we are building an expanded convention center, but what we're actually building down there to me is a visitor hospitality tourism complex anchored by this expanded convention center, but we are supposed to move down there as well and have a new visitor center. We offer themed tours at Visit Bloomington, a quarry tour, campus tour, culinary tours, things like that. We've been doing a lot more of that over the years, and they are very popular. We want to be downtown doing more of those, whether it's on a monthly, a quarterly basis, things like that. We need to be right down here in the middle of things and sending them out like the heart pumping out the blood to the body. Yeah. Where we're located north on Old 37 is just not a vital entryway point. I mean, mobile phones and things have really stopped so many people from coming in our front doors, but all of our touching points are way up electronically. But we know being downtown, so that's where we want to be, and we want to keep growing responsibly. And like I said, we want to be filling those gaps in weekday business and doing a lot more conferences and conventions and part of the hospital complex that's coming. The hospital complex, the Switchyard Park, and all that stuff. That hospital, I'm not even talking about the healthcare part of it. I don't know anything about that other than I know our healthcare levels are going to go way up, and that's a beautiful thing. But what's great about that is for us in the economic development world is people are going to come here from all over the world to visit that facility. And also people, if we have a convention center that's competing with big Fort city, Wayne and Evansville and French Lick. And, I'm not talking about competing with Indianapolis. That's not what we're doing
their
here.
Convention center is like 5 blocks long. And
we're going after groups of 400 and 500, Midwest, Great Lakes Association, those types of things. But when you bring people here that have never been here before, and like I said, maybe the chiropractor came for the chiropractor, they see that. They're exposed to the community, and they're like, 80% of the people that relocate to a community for a job first experienced it as a tourist in some way. Either they went there leisurely or they went to for bleisure, business and leisure put together. So that convention center is going to be a big deal for investment in this community, entrepreneurs relocating, people coming here for jobs, and it all works together. And so we're going to be a part of that. That was a long answer to your, what am I going to be in 5 years?
Yeah. Because you moving downtown as well as Switchyard Park, the biggest park we'll have in Bloomington, will be there. It's being constructed right now.
It's a destination park.
Yeah,
it's a
that's going to be
park.
cool.
Just like we have destination restaurants, people seek those out, and they come here to Upland and those places because they hear about them.
All right, if folks want to find you all for maybe tours, are you going to do any of those like double-decker open-top buses like around Bloomington, like that?
You never know. We've talked about. I mean, no, we're not going to do that. But certainly some shuttle opportunities are always open as we continue to responsibly grow and expand, and if there's a market for that. Last thing we want to do is have one of those with nobody on it. You know what I mean?
Well,
Visit Bloomington.com, www.visitbloomington.com, and give us some feedback. Find calendar events and all kinds of things on there. We'd love to hear from anybody.
Cool. Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining us on Scratch Entrepreneur today.
Thanks for having us.
So we're going to head over to Patreon for the after show. We'll see what Mike felt like he left out, talk some more college football, and play a game called 5 Questions Your Employees Would Never Ask, but Totally Should. If you want to head over there, it's patreon.com/scratchentrepreneur. For those of you that aren't headed over to Patreon, thank you so much for listening. Please do take a moment to subscribe and rate the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll see you the same time, same place next week.